Hi everybody and welcome to For the Craft. In this video I use this AirFix Titanic plastic model kit at 1 to 1000 scale in order to create a sinking Britannic diorama. After I primed all the plastic parts, I started painting my model. First I started creating the extra decks and rooms that Britannic had in the aft section. I used styrene to create the decks, and I marked the decks with my cutter knife so that they would have the same floor pattern as the rest of the ship. I created the extra rooms in the aft section of the ship with polymer clay, and with a thin pen I drew the windows and the doors. In order to avoid air bubbles coming from the underwater part of the ship, I filled the bow of the ship with silicone. Britannic sank because she hit a naval mine, so with my Dremel tool I created the hole caused by the mine explosion. I also thought that it would be cool if I put some naval mines underwater around the ship, and of course I created the chain of the naval mine that exploded. Then I created the mold, and I applied a first layer of epoxy resin with dark blue color. Whilst this first layer was curing, I used these oil colors to create the weathering on the model. Then I printed the distinctive green lines and red crosses that Britannic had on her hull, and I glued them on the ship. I wanted first to finalize the bow of the ship so that I could proceed with the resin pouring. So I used thin wire for the rigging, and because I also wanted to create the air bubbles coming from the bow section of the ship whilst it was sinking, I used UV resin, which I stirred a lot with a brush, and that created all these air bubbles that I needed in order to create this effect on the ship. Once I finished all these details on the bow section of the ship, I proceeded with the resin pouring. After 4 days the resin had cured, and I started creating the wooden base for my diorama. I also used an acrylic water texture gel to create the sea surface. And I mixed these two acrylic materials to create the foams and the turbulence of the water around the ship. With the same materials, I also made the water flowing from the stern of the ship, which had risen out of the water. At this stage, I glued my diorama on the wooden base, and then proceeded to create the Britannic's upper decks, so I painted the funnels, and with thin wire I created the rigging around the funnels. Then I glued the upper deck section to the rest of the ship, and I used some leftover photo-etched metal railings to create handrails on the ship. One of the main features of Britannic were the large gantry davits it had on the upper decks for the extra lifeboats it carried on board. I used styrene to create these gantry davits, which I then heated in the flame of a candle so that I could give them the appropriate shape. As I was coming closer to the completion of this diorama, I worked on the final details. So I created the ropes coming from the gantry davits, and I also glued the lifeboats on the sea. I finalized the rigging on the ship's stern. I used cotton painted grey to create the smoke coming from the ship's funnels. I placed the red crosses that the ship had on her decks and also her Red Cross flag. I fixed the Marconi cables in their place and my diorama was finished. So this is the sinking Britannic diorama, and I hope that you like the final result. If you think that I could have made something differently or better, let me know in the comment section. As you know, I always love to hear your opinions and I try to respond as much as possible. Thank you all very much for watching. If you liked the video, please don't forget to press the like button and to subscribe to my channel. As always, I would like also to say a big thank you to all the supporters of my channel. You guys are all awesome. Have a great day everyone, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.